I know your evening, but I can't wake everyone up. My name is Venetia Kgabo. I'm from Mseleni Hospital, which is in KZN. I'm a medical officer in the pediatric ward. Can you hear me? I know it makes quite a bit of noise, but I think my voice is loud enough. Okay, so Mseleni Hospital is a 184-bed district hospital located in the Mseleni district in KZN. The catchment area includes the Mhlabuyalingana and the big 5 municipalities. And the community is classified as of low socioeconomic status, falling under the quintile 1 in the ranking of socioeconomic status. So that's just a picture of our entrance at Mseleni Hospital. Just a map so that you can see where Mseleni is. So it's in the northeastern area of KZN, 60 kilometers from the Mozambican border. It's quite a beautiful area. If you haven't had time to go to the area in Mkanyakuda, I suggest that you go visit. So, I'll be discussing a program which is similar to what Venetia has just discussed, but ours is a little bit different. An intervention which we decided to start as we identified that a significant number of our mortalities were related to patients that were actually known to us. They've previously been admitted to the ward, or they are known to the facility and they defaulted their follow-up. Throughout the day, I think we've picked up that it is a resounding theme of an issue of loss to follow-up, defaulting in all parts of clinical management in pediatric cases, even adult cases. So we designed a program addressing these issues, and we decided to use systems that are already in place and to try and use the resources that we already have. In rural areas, we have a lot of problems when it comes to technology, faxes being available. People in these days don't all have cell phones, so using WhatsApp is not something that is practical in our area. And a lot of the patients are cared for by older gogos, women who are older. They don't know how to use a cell phone, and there's also issues with cell phone reception. So we had to find out some form of a program that we can use with the structures that we have in place already. So the program has made a remarkable impact, our under 5 mortality rate, and has improved the well-being of numerous children. We consider our program one that other hospitals should possibly consider adopting for their facilities. So in 2012, our in-hospital mortality rate was sitting at 9.2. We decided to do an audit of those cases, and we identified reasons for that. Loss to follow-up was one of the major issues that resulted in these children coming back peri-arrest and actually dying. So identified reasons for loss to follow-up was that the parent or the caregiver had very poor insight into the child's condition. They were disempowered, had financial constraints, lack of transport, even though it's rural areas and we have clinics available in those different areas. Some of the homes are actually quite remote and they struggle to actually get to facilities. I'll give you an example of transports that they have to pay. If they were to loan out a private car to try and get to a facility, they can easily spend up to 600 to 1,000 rand just on a visit. The negative clinic or hospital staff issues, I think we've heard this problem in other presentations today. Stigma related to mothers who don't actually want to bring their kids to clinics because they don't want to be perceived as being bad parents. Why is your child always going to clinic? Why are they always going to hospital? Seeking alternative medicine is also something that is an issue. And in South Africa, we're told to embrace different cultures, but yes, it does also cause late presentation to the hospital, as well as poor social support. Fathers who are not involved, fragmented families, very poor social support, as well as single-headed families. So the program the main purpose was to reduce the under 5's mortality by delivering more effective services to children. And the aim was to develop a set protocol for post-discharge from hospital and steps in place to identify those that have defaulted their follow-up and how to trace them. So who was involved? A dedicated team is obviously needed. So it included our therapy department, social workers, dietitians, psychologists, a doctor, PHC staff, that includes the nurses as well as supervisors, operational managers, the clinic coordinator, community caregivers, as we've heard in the previous presentation, ward-based outreach team, as well as the ward operational manager. So it began in 2013, and we were quite enthusiastic. We started to include about 7 categories of children that we wanted to follow up, and we found ourselves drowning in confusion. We had planned to have some form of a tracer form that we would fill out information that we could trace the child, and we had issues as to who's going to fill out this form. Would it be photocopied or carbon paper copied? Who would update the form? These seem like tiny little issues, but they can actually make or break a program. Who is the clinic under 5's coordinator? Would there be a coordinator of this program at the local clinic? Who was meant to see the patients on the review? Would it be the doctor, the dietitian, or the therapist? And how do we get a hold of the patient if they do default? So by March 2014, which is 6 months in, we had 68 children in the program. We found that 2 were confirmed dead, and only 6 were traced at this point. Maybe the rest did follow up and we didn't know. We had no record. So what did we do wrong? We had to go back to the drawing board, and we decided to start off small and simple. Then expand once the program was functioning well in the wards and in the clinics. We needed to identify a named coordinator. We needed to have specific duties for each of the people that were involved. And we needed to have a set protocol which had a set flow diagram to actually show how to follow up. So we decided to focus on severe acute malnutrition, RBD reactive patients who are defaulting treatment or not virally suppressed, TB defaulting treatment with complications. Those would be the main ones who would be followed up by a medical officer. Our medical officers would visit our local clinics. We've got 9 local clinics in our area, and each clinic is visited minimally once in a week, and others are visited maximum 3 times in a week by a medical officer as well as the MDD team. The MAMs would be followed up by dietitians. Therapy team would see those that have disabilities or developmental delay, the social worker with problems, and they would then refer any complicated cases to the doctor. So we tried this again. We updated the tracer form, which I will show you now. So the tracer form looks like this. All right, so it's got some form. There's a classification as to what the diagnosis is, the name of the patient, the caregiver, the family members, how to actually trace them, the nearest shop. We don't have addresses in our area, so it's the closest shop or whichever area is close to home so that we can actually identify them. So if anybody wants to see the form closer, I'm willing to show you later after the discussion. So a medical officer would go via this board. They would then pick that form out of that envelope when visiting the clinic. They would then hand it over to the coordinator at the clinic. We would then meet our CCGs who would be involved in the program once every 2 months to discuss any issues or problems. And this was a training session to actually train them on things that they would identify as complications and how to deal with these complications and how to actually pick up children who are deteriorating. So once again, we still had issues with patients, difficulty tracing patients, and particularly those who did not come from our area. They came ill, visiting, admitted, they would then leave, go to a different area. We still struggle to actually find these patients. Coordinating the coordinators who take leave and don't actually hand over to anybody. The incorrect filling of forms. If a form was not filled out correctly, you would be missing vital information. I'm going to skip the rest of the challenges that we had. But then we decided that we should actually give the coordinators a role that they need to actually play and what is their responsibility. As soon as you identified the responsibility that they had in this program, it made things much, much easier. So how are we doing so far? Since the beginning of the program, we've had 218 patients in the program. And we've discharged 126 from the program. 8 were confirmed dead. And currently we have 67 running in the program and 17 that have not been traced yet. Each MO gives back feedback. So once a patient is seen by a medical officer, there is a form that we get feedback from, which comes back to the facility, and it's electronically updated so that we know at least what's happening with these patients. So in 2012, as I mentioned, our in-hospital mortality rate for under 5s was 9.2. In 2015, we were sitting at 3.1. So just to improve the program, communication. I can't say it enough. In April 2016, we actually decided to start what was called a SAM committee. We noticed that this program actually resulted in more programs which ended up branching off from this as more issues were identified. So we saw that SAMs actually needed a lot more intensive counseling with the families, meetings that would be held. So if anybody's admitted as a SAM, we would have a meeting every 2 weeks in the ward involving, we would call the family, we would identify where the father is. The father must be present, as well as any family members from the maternal and the paternal side to discuss the case. Just so you can see a monthly comparison of our deaths throughout 2015. Our average, we were looking at about 1 death per month. And in 2016, we're now sitting at some months where we don't even have deaths. And our program has actually resulted in a lot of improvement. I'm going to show you a case of, this is our patient. His name is Mseleni. Given permission to show pictures. So he was put into our program. He had initially been admitted with just gastroenteritis. He wasn't a SAM when he was admitted, but he was newly diagnosed RBD reactive as well as the mom during the ward. We had an MDT meeting and we put him into the program, but mom left and she gave us incorrect information. We couldn't trace her. But luckily, as we called the community caregiver who actually knew this patient, they managed to trace her 2 hours away from our hospital in an area called Venetia. He then returned in this condition. He was 6 months old, weighing 3.7 kgs. Critically ill baby. This is him at 10 months. At 6 months. He had improved. So during the admission, we discharged him and we put him into the high-risk follow-up. The CCGs were following him up constantly, and this is him at 18 months. And this is him 2 weeks ago. I just want to encourage you all that we can do it, team accountability, and the team.
Thank you very, very much. I'm afraid we've really run over time. Unless there's a burning question.